Welcome, friends. Rodge here, aka the Wisco Horn Dog, back again with another Saga Thursday. Today we're going to take a look at the Anglo-Saxon Battle Board. So this is the one that I'm pretty intimately familiar with. You may have heard me chatting about that in my Saga Storm review, some of the various Anglo-Saxon abilities. Now, one thing is I got Mikey G, the People's Viking, helping me out with this again. We actually recorded this prior to the Saga Storm, and I had some technical difficulties, which prevented the also a baby. So having a kid can really put a monkey wrench in things, but it prevented the video from coming out. So we're doing it now, and so there might be some references to the storm in it. Maybe there isn't. Maybe I'm just freaking you guys out for no reason. But this one is also split into two separate videos, trying to keep the length of these damn things down. But we like to chat way too much about Saga, and let's just get into it.
And then I'm gonna pretend like we just met on the street.
Okay.
All right, back again with the People's Viking, Mr. Mikey G. How are you, buddy?
Pretty good. How you doing, bud?
Yeah, I'm good. Played any Saga? No.
Nope.
Get anything? We did. We had our big game. We had our big campaign finale battle. That was pretty fun. I was rocking the Anglo-Saxons, and I teamed up with Butch.
Nice.
Who was running the Knights Brotherhood Hospitaller.
Sweet.
And we're going up against Jerry with his Teutonic Knights and Andrew's Vikings. So started off pretty rough for us, but by the end, we had fucking scooped up. Basically, we had 3 objectives, and we kind of secured 2 of them.
Nice.
But it was pretty rough going at first when Butch charged like a unit of like 8 Hearthguard into 4 undefended Berserkers. Like, he didn't have any dice on the board.
Okay.
And then he lost half the Hearthguard, and there was still one Berserker left. Who went on to attack at his turn and kill the rest. It's totally stupid.
Holy crap! The odds on that.
Yeah, he made like 1,000,000 5-ups basically. So that was pretty awesome. But so I was telling Butch, you're the strike missile, man. You go in, you take him out, but it just completely farted in our laps. But
that's the beauty of Saga. Sometimes someone rolls a bunch of 5+ defense dice, and your plans go to shit.
Yeah, and then on the other side, I had a unit of Ferd that basically did the same thing. It took three of Andrew's units, and there's still a couple Ferd guys left, just holding the line. So it was pretty fun times. So we're going to chat about the Anglo-Saxons, the board that took me to victory.
Yup.
So this one I've also played quite a bit. And is anybody in your area really playing these guys?
Not that I know of. I don't have a lot of experience playing against these dudes, so.
Okay. Yeah, I think you and me played once with them. You remember?
Were you playing Saxons that time, or were you playing?
Yeah, I was using.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure I was using Saxons.
Okay. Yep.
So. Yeah, that was a squeaker. It was a squeaker.
I feel like you won that one.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
I did. It was a squeak. It was a squeaker.
Which our game at Adepticon was also a squeaker. I think we tied that one. So
yeah, that was a squeaker.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. So let's start along the left-hand edge there, because in addition to the Hearthguard, Warrior, and Choral activations, we've got a slightly different one here, which is the Muster.
Muster.
Yes, Muster. So, discard 1 die to activate any one unit made up of at least 10 models. So, you can use any kind of die here. And this seems like it's pretty good. You can activate anything, and you could pile a bunch of dice on there. So, you could potentially not even decide what you're going to, which units you're going to activate, how many times. You can kind of leave yourself open for, the possibilities, my man.
Yep.
The delights.
Yep.
The delights that unfold. But there's one big thing that I always forget, so I've stopped throwing all my dice on there. And that's because you can't use it to activate your warlord or
Yep.
if you have a priest or something like that. So it's any unit of 10 guys. So yeah, if you're not like thinking for a second, you pile them all on and your warlord basically has this one activation and he's done. So what I've been doing, and maybe, once you've played with the board a bit, you might know a little bit better about how to allocate, but I just use the muster to activate the feared units, which are, we should say in the Saxon list, the Anglo-Saxons, their kind of special thing is the big units of levy with spears or hand weapons and shields, whatever have you. And they're every 2 guys in close combat gives you 1 attack, and then they have armor of 4+. So they're levies that you can kind of fight with. They're not the total sticks of butter like you usually used to when you're going up against levies.
Yep.
So any kind of list is going to have a couple of levies. So I use this to activate my levies then, because you can use any dice. So it's better than just the uncommon or the rare that you could normally use to activate them.
Yep.
So you can just use the common dice. And then, so I do like to kind of allocate then. But, I mean, once you have it all figured out, you could put a big pile in the muster, and then you just kind of figure out how many times you're going to activate your warlord and slide those dice over.
Yep.
Because, that is kind of a big thing when, we talk about crazy swings and stuff like that. Kind of somewhat to balancing things is people are usually locked in their activation. So it's really, if you do get really lucky, like it's kind of hard to jump in and go for the throat on it, because you already, you're all out of Hearthguard activations, or, you only have 1 more or something like that. So I think the muster and the multiple activations leave you open to some delicious possibilities.
The only tricky bit is because it requires that the unit is made up of at least 10 models.
If
you go in thinking I'm going to slaughter and I'm going to take 1 wound and I'm going to be fine, and then you end up taking 4 or 5 wounds, and now your unit's below that sweet 10 spot. Well, now you can't activate them again if you were kind of going for that scenario.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that bit too. That has also bit me in the ass. So when you do get unlucky, then we can't activate that unit anymore.
Yep.
So, just be careful with it. Don't go overboard. You're gonna have to play the board a couple times before you can really get a feel for when you want to rely on the muster. But everything else is the same there. Yep. Besides that, so we can go up to Stout Hearts. So this one is orders or orders reaction, so you could use it during their turn if you desired. You can use any dice. And until the end of the turn, when determining the effect of saga abilities, each of your units are considered to be composed of the actual number of figures +2 or +4 if it's a fancy helmet. So
how often do you use this as a Saxon player?
Okay, this is kind of you really don't want to have to use it if you can. It's kind of like once you start taking casualties, it's kind of like a little, like a dice tax almost that you have to pay to keep using your abilities. I mean, you can use it to just kind of bump up your units and kind of, get the most out of the numbers abilities, but usually you're just getting 1 or 2 more dice. Sometimes a couple of these you need to hit the 10-man threshold, so then it's kind of a no-brainer to use it. But if you have 12-man units, 12 going to 14 really doesn't do much for most of these abilities. Usually it's 1 die on whatever it is. And you don't really have a lot of dice to spend on multiples of those. Because if you use 3 abilities, it's 3 extra dice, whatever you're doing. But I only kind of use it if I have to. The builds that I use, you want to start big, so you don't have to use this. Sometimes when you're going in for the kill, when you're just making a play with 1 huge unit, and you want to maximize your attacks and everything on that 1 unit, I'll pop it in there. But I don't find myself using it that much, and I don't think I've ever really put a helmet down for the +4.
Wait, let me get this straight. Are you saying that you have to use this for each ability or each unit that you use it for?
No,
because you use it once and then it affects all of your units for the turn.
Everybody gets affected by it.
You made it sound like you had to use this multiple times in order to make this happen.
Yeah, there's a couple points when you want to have 10 guys, so it's really, really important. But I don't really try not to use it.
Sure.
I mean, you're going to find yourself, once you start taking casualties, having to rely on it. But yeah, that's not anything to write home about. So moving on, the truce. Why don't you read this one out here, Mikey?
So truce is an orders ability, and it uses either an uncommon or a rare die. It says, discard this die. At the end of this turn, any unit that has not been activated discards 1 fatigue, and units composed of at least 10 models discard 2 fatigues. This, to me, seems like it, for the uncommon especially, can be a fairly cheap way. You know, if you're using only one-ish unit and you're playing something where you've managed to accumulate some fatigues, could be useful to drop, to like really maximize your orders because you're not having to spend dice to rest everywhere. But the idea of not having been activated, you know, you're hopefully not leaving things too far behind. You might have to activate most of your units to make things happen. You know, some of your abilities activate a bunch of different units, like No Surrender, we'll talk about that later, activates all of them, so that doesn't really work with this. So to me, it seems like, you know, if you're only going to be doing a small thing with a unit or two, or maximizing that 1 or 2 units and then everyone else leaving and sitting, can be useful, but otherwise this to me seems a little bit situational. I don't know what your experience is with it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really use this one too often. It's kind of a thing when you have an extra horse left over. You could use it to rest a couple piddly units you have kind of hanging out behind there. Yeah, most of the time, you know, I think about using it, and then I'm like, well, you know, I really need to move them up or get them up there, and I can't really have them sitting around there. But I think I think for an uncommon, it's fair if you have multiple units. You're playing a 6-point game, and you know, basically, if you get more than 2 or 3 fatigues recouped out of it, I think it's a good deal.
I can't imagine using a rare on that though. Like that's so many other things to use rares on.
Yeah, I agree. This board is big for, like, if you get a rare, like, you're gonna be happy. If you don't, you're gonna be sad. Okay, moving on. Defenders of the Realm. This one's a melee ability using an uncommon die, and you gain 2 extra attack or defense die. And if your unit is made up of at least 10 models, you gain 2 extra on top of that, so you get 4.
Yep.
So this one's awesome.
Yes.
Like, I use this one pretty much all the time.
Yes, every turn you're in combat.
Yeah, the other issues are, you know, there's a couple other abilities, but they all require 2 dice. So this is the only 1 die kind of combat boost you're gonna get, and it's good. That's a good bang for your buck.
1 dice for 4, like that's. Oof.
Yeah, especially for the defense die. You know, I think there's a lot of ways to get more attack dice in a lot of boards, but to get 4 defense dice for 1 die, that's pretty good. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I always, pretty much that's the first thing almost I put it on every time. And say definitely that's where you're getting the most bang for your buck. Moving on, shoulder to shoulder. So this one is similar to. Is there one in the Anglo-Dane board that's shoulder to shoulder? Or is the ability just similar, and that's why I'm thinking that?
I think the ability is similar. There's a way to increase your armor in Anglo-Dane, but it doesn't have the extra, there's a little extra something here.
Yeah, we got a little extra juice here. So this one's a melee, or it could be a shooting reaction. It's an uncommon and a common. Your unit increases its armor by 1, which is the same as that Anglo-Dane ability, which I think costs 2 dice. And then a little extra juice there over the 10-pack. You get 2 extra defensive die. So, yeah, this one is pretty awesome too.
Yep.
If you got the horse and the axe, I mean, you can combo it with Defenders of the Realm. You could get 6 defense dice with
3 of your Saga dice.
+1 armor.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a pretty good ratio. I don't find myself using it that often because I think Defenders of the Realm gives me a good defensive bang for my buck with the 1, and a lot of the time I find myself wanting more attack dice when I play.
Yep.
So usually I shunt it towards the Clash of Shields ability, which we'll chat about a little later. But
it's the +1 armor abilities that require 2 Saga dice. They're always, to me, feel a little expensive. Like +1 armor is a big deal, but at the same time, 2 Saga dice is pretty tough sometimes to let go of. But however, this one does allow you that if you want to use Defenders of the Realm to add 4 attack dice, because they could be a mix of either. So all of your attack dice with Defenders of the Realm, that's
correct.
4 attack dice. Then you can use shoulder to shoulder to gain that defensive boost that you're kind of lacking at that point.
Yeah, it's kind of situational. You just want to keep an eye out for whenever if they got fatigue or something like that with your warriors. If you can go from a 5 to a 6, that's kind of when I do it. Going from a 4 to a 5 doesn't seem that great, but when you go from 5 to 6 with those 2 extra defense dice, you feel pretty invulnerable.
Yep.
You can go up against anything at that point. Yep. So that's kind of if I know I can get that, I'm gonna go for it because there isn't a lot of times that you get swings at the enemy and then you're kind of completely invulnerable on the way back, like you could be potentially with this one here. So okay, moving down, Brett Walda. Why don't you read that one out, buddy?
Yeah, it's a melee ability. Uses either an uncommon or a rare die. Discard this die. Your warlord gains 1 armor and may reroll once each defense die that did not cancel an enemy hit. This to me, I mean, unless you were in your warlord's in really tough shape, like in a bad spot, I wouldn't use the rare for it. But for an uncommon die, you can get your warlord up into the mix of things, and man, he's pretty much sitting on 6 armor the whole time. He's re-rolling all of his stuff. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's really good. I like to get my warlord up into shit. So like, I think this board is probably why. Like, I started even carrying that forward with the Anglo-Danes, probably too, because a lot of my practice games were on this board because that's always this list that I was thinking. But yeah, that's pretty awesome. You can really, if you're dropping, in the defensive turn, you could drop 3 attack dice for 2 block dice. You could even throw in Defenders of the Realm. It's 2 dice. It's okay on them.
Yep.
And then you have like 4 black dice that you're re-rolling.
Yep.
Like, if you're rolling pretty good, you can get through a lot of shit. And actually, in our big campaign game, like, that's pretty much this ability got me through it in the end, because we had we're playing team battles, but if I was kind of the main warlord, if I died, like, I wouldn't be able to win the campaign, and like Butcher would, if we won together, he would like be the winner of the campaign.
Okay.
So there's at one point where we're winning, but then Jerry did like an all-out assault on my warlord just to take the victory from me in the end. And like, he wiped out all the warriors, and then it was the warlord sitting by himself with like 1 warrior, and then he went in, and I think I saved, I popped this ability. He probably took 5 or 6 wounds, and he made it through in the end.
Man.
Like, that guy lived too. So like, in the end, I was able to back up the warlord. That one guy just moved up, kind of gummed up the works, and then I scooted into the forest and just hunkered down.
Awesome.
So, yeah, this is a good, just kind of defensive one, just to always kind of have in your back pocket here. A lot of times I'll put it there, and most turns you don't use it, but if you're playing against unfamiliar lists and stuff like that, where you just, everything seems fine, I'll just move up here, and then bam, bam, yep. And like, you're in the shit. This is definitely a good one in your back pocket here. Okay, so moving up back to the top, the Feared. This is a rare dice used in the orders phase, and you roll 1 extra Saga dice for each of your units made up of at least 10 figures. So Yeah, before I said you're hoping and you're praying for a rare, this pretty much this is it right here. Because the muster ability replaces the activation pool special order thing that everybody else gets, where you toss a rare and get 2 dice, and you can kind of, if you just keep rolling rares, you keep tossing more dice. Well, the Anglo-Saxons don't have that at all, so they're just relying on this. But at the start of the battle, then, if you build your list right, you're probably going to have 3 or 4 10-man models or 10-man units. So it's basically 3 or 4 extra Saga dice. And this is really bad if you're not playing with a priest. Like, yeah, you really, really need to get that bank on that rare if you can. Yeah, it's kind of rough later towards the end of the battle when you don't have any more units.
Yeah, that's the tricky bit.
Counter more.
Yeah, because you can use the stout hearts first in order to boost your unit up to potentially that 10, and then use that Fjord and actually end up rolling the die that you just spent along with any that you got left. So there's a way that you can kind of keep your army limping along as you get into the mid game. But yeah, when you get late game, and if your units have been cut down to like 4 or 5 guys a piece, which is arguably one of the strategies how you take on Anglo-Saxons, is you just cut their units down. The inability to roll any extra dice if you get lucky and pop a rare. That's rough. That's really rough.
Yeah, I mean, because you're going to use a die for the stout hearts, a die for the Fjord, and then you're maybe rolling 3 dice, or if you haven't had if you have had 1 unit limit, you might be just might be like a net 1 dice gain in the end, and you might just roll all commons, or you're looking for a horse, you don't get it. So yeah, that's pretty rough. It's good at the beginning, feel good, all the morale is high, the troops are lined up. The abilities are flowing. They got vengeance in their blood. Okay.
And we're going to cut it there. So that is enough for now. Hopefully you've had your fill of the Anglo-Saxon Warband Battle Board so far. We are going to bring it back next week on the next Saga Thursday. And we'll wrap up with the remaining battle board abilities and give our overall thoughts about the Anglo-Saxon warband in general. And I can't wait to look forward to that. Like and favorite this shit. If you got a buddy who's learning Saga, or you just want to pester him with Saga videos, send him a link. Spread the word. Definitely helps me out. Subscribe to this shit yourself so you don't miss the next one. This is just part 1. You need to see part 2, man. It's coming. Anyways, become a hobby horn dog today, my friends. Saga!